Mother's Day in the US, so happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, especially my mom who gives me motivation to continue to grow this channel so I can give back to her. Let's jump into this. I really love the dancers, and I really appreciate the dancers, and I love how they incorporated fabric because it was such a large venue. I feel like the fabric, it really took up a lot of space on stage, so even if you were sitting far away, you were still able to appreciate the movement that was happening. Love the ladies for the opening. I think that they looked so beautiful, and the only thing I wish that would have changed is that we would have had more cameras on stage, or just another camera on stage just weaving in and out of the contestants. I always love to get those close-up shots. The staging overall, very beautiful, and the ladies in all those little black dresses looked so classic and timeless. And then they also wore some of the South Sea pearls, which was really beautiful. It's so smart to incorporate sponsors in that way. Just something different and unique. It was interesting to hear the contestants announce themselves on stage with the pre-recording versus actually standing in front of a microphone to announce themselves, and it just reminded me of the whole Miss France introduction. So I'm just wondering if maybe that went into the thought process behind having a pre-recording instead of a live audio version. If you know, you know. When Behol was announced though, you could hear the audience scream, and I can tell you from experience that if you can hear the audience scream during the telecast from this recording, then I can assure you it is so loud in the venue. So I can just only imagine how loud the crowd was cheering for her. I didn't realize that Zosie was going to be hosting, and I loved that. And then also Maureen was hosting as well. Remember, she competed in the US as well as in the Philippines, and so it was wonderful to see a queen returning, well, two queens returning. That's always amazing. I love when we can use the talent of our title holders in a show, because to me, that speaks to the quality of the women and to the success and relevancy of an organization. I was really happy to see that there were performers for the swimsuit competition. I like how they made use of the stage. They removed some of the stairs, and then they had a very interesting walking pattern. Now, my one critique is that I felt like the cameras were quite far away when the contestants walked towards the back of the stage. And the other interesting thing about that, because this was my comment for a lot of contestants, is that they really didn't look at the camera for that back walk. I'm not sure why, if they were instructed not to do so, but if it were me personally, I definitely would have been face out to the audience. If you're enjoying this episode, please consider subscribing and hitting the notifications bell. And if you'd like to support the channel in other ways, you can do so by shopping in the merch store, hitting that super thanks button, or joining memberships for exclusive content and extended episodes. I didn't realize till today that there would be a top 18, so that was a lot. I wish I would have known, because I had such a hard time narrowing down my favorites for my preliminary episode. Go check that out. I narrowed things down to a top 15, but if I had known 18, wow, I think we would have been quite accurate. My goodness. So I felt like when I saw the announcement of the top 18 that it really came down to the interview, because I felt like so many of them had some great performances on stage, and there were a couple ladies that were left out of the top 18 that I know people were commenting on in my preliminary recap. They were like, why wasn't she in this episode? And my reasoning for a few of the contestants was I believed that they would get knocked out of semifinals because of their interview performance. Somebody commented that this year that their interview is worth 50% of their overall score for that preliminary score, and I don't know if that's true. If you know, please comment below and share. That's really interesting. So if that is the case, and if interview is weighted that heavily, then our placements made a lot of sense for the top 18. I want to say overall though, for the top 18, I felt like everybody was pretty consistent. I really liked the performances. There wasn't anything too crazy that happened here that would have changed my mind. But what was interesting is that they said that they had technical difficulties and that they had to manually tabulate. I've been at pageants where that's happened before. That's not a great time. So they took all of the top 18 and they moved them on to the evening gown competition. So I'm not going to spend too much time on swim because everybody moved on. Did you notice though that they brought in the rhymes? Like the rhymes that what Nick would do for Miss USA and Miss Universe? Whenever they would announce the contestants, they had a cute little rhyme. I think they're cute. I don't know how you feel about it. I know they can be a little cheesy sometimes, but I had fun with all of the rhymes. Agusa Del Norte, so for me, once again, I just felt like she was very much overarching during her walk, and then her head seemed to go with her. It's like whenever she went one direction or the other, you could really see the head follow. Bahol, great job. She looked really solid to me walking down the runway. Exactly what I would have expected, exactly what she needed to move on. Pampanga, great eye contact with the camera, great walk. I wish that she would have had a little bit more eye contact when she was doing the sidewalk. I really like her cape reveal, and then I also wish she would have just stayed on that straight line for the runway portion when she was going towards the audience, but overall, great job. I knew that she would be advancing. Eastern Samar, very solid performance here. This is what I expected of her. She really nails all of her poses. That's what I was looking for, and that's what I saw here. Makati, very surprised she brought back that long hair, which honestly, I don't hate it because I preferred this look to that side part that she was doing for prelims. So that for me was a good change. I do, however, think though that this performance should have been cleaner overall. This is very interesting to me. I really think that she's gonna have to work on swimsuit going to Miss Universe. If we took this performance and we put it on the Miss Universe preliminary stage, I don't believe that this performance would score high enough for her to advance into the semifinals. So that is gonna be something that I think that she's going to need work on leading up to Miss Universe if you wanna get back into the semifinals. Paranaque was ready and waiting for the camera, and I loved that. She was just ready to go. She's stunning. She looked fit. I loved it. The way I felt about her though throughout the entire competition is she was getting those like middle of the road scores. I talked about this in an episode. It might have been one of my memberships episode, but I said that there was kind of no scenario where I didn't see her making semifinals, but the whole time I was like, I didn't feel that there was enough to really be boosting her into a top 5. Like she was doing very well, but there weren't memorable moments for me in her performances. So she was great though. I'd really like to see her come back. I love her look. Also, let's say congrats because she is the first mom to make semifinals at Miss Universe Philippines. So she made history. Cha Angkazan, I was so happy to see her in the semifinals. Obviously one of my personal favorites if you've been watching the other episodes. She had a really, really great spin turn, nice facials at the end of the runway. To me, she's just such a strong performer. It's funny enough though, I really didn't hear the crowd cheering for her. I'm not sure why that is, or if it's like there's no reason for it. It's just that she just doesn't have as large of a fan base, but honestly, I think she should. She deserves it. Sorsogon, I was so happy to see her in semifinals. I just didn't know how the judges would take her evening gown performance, although I thought it was great. The gown did worry me for that, but her interview was great. I forgot to put her in my interview episode. I apologize, but I loved her. Swimsuit was great. I think she's stunning, so I was very happy to see her here. And yeah, she just had such a great spin turn in the back of the stage. Fabulous. Mandalay Young, solid, nice walk here. She was one of my contestants for prelims that I was like right on the edge. And here's what I have to say about that for our contestants on the edge. It's really interesting when you judge a pageant because there's those ladies that you kind of like get an easy pass. You're like, oh, she's gonna advance to a top 5, you know, because she's so strong, she's doing so well, she's really standing out. Then you have the other group of ladies. So I kind of think of like top 5 and then I think semifinalists. And then you have these girls in the semifinalists range, and it's really interesting because sometimes I've judged girls and I've given her that semi-finalist score, like something I'm like, okay, she should be advancing here. And then when I watch the results, sometimes a couple of those ladies don't make it to semifinals. And what's interesting is that I've spoken to fellow judges after a show and we've talked to a couple of us. I remember one specific contestant where we saw her not make it to semifinals. And actually the whole panel was shocked because we were all like, well, I liked her. Like, I thought that I gave her a good enough score to advance to semifinals, but we all essentially had that same feeling where we were like, we like her for semifinals, but she's not like a clear path to a top 5. So we were all giving her average scores, and it turns out somebody else just edged her right out of that semifinalist spot. So ladies, you can't take anything for granted. You really got to aim for the consistency of being seen as a top 5 competitor to basically ensure that you're at least moving on to semifinals. Because if you don't move on to that, it's done. Bacolod, super nice spin turn, probably the best swim performance I've seen from her this entire time. Cebu Province looked amazing. I loved her signature double spin turn that she added in there. She was just stunning and fit as ever. My goodness. Marinduque, really love the spin turns, love the poses. I think she was super solid, but it was competitive and it was just hard to push her into that top 5 with this performance. You really, really needed something that is going to help you really stand out. This is the new one. Here she is. She's a little naughty, but if you hold her, she's fine. As long as you hold her. That's all she wants. She just wants to be held. Zambala's. Amazing first pose here. She had a really nice little wrapper removal. I like that. It was creative. It was fun. She was really relaxed as she was going down the runway. Also super, super fit. So I loved this. Kavite, I'm so surprised. I really feel like she got lost in the mix here. I think that the first pose right out the gate could have been a little bit cleaner. And I loved the facial that she made at the back of the runway. So, so stunning. And I think that her best pose was at the end of the runway, but just got knocked out. Quick pause. If you're preparing for a competition, check out the free pageant prep course that I've linked in the description below. Devout Oriental. Oh my gosh. All legs, all legs. She had a really sharp flip turn at the back of the runway, and I really, really liked that. That was nice. I feel like she caught the camera as well, which not many contestants did. As the camera moved around them, when they got to the last pose, the camera rotated, and she caught the glance of the camera, and I was like, wow, very impressed with that. And you know she's one of my personal favorites. Baguio. So gorgeous, so gorgeous. I loved her. I just didn't even feel like she overshot this performance. As you know, that was my concern. She really cleaned up the arms. They were not swinging as much in the front of the thighs. They weren't as distracting. And it was just great. I loved her. I loved her. Isabella, great opening pose, great turn at the back of the runway. Here's another contestant, though I just felt like this was a semi-finalist performance, and she just needed, you need something a little more, a little extra special to be moving on for finals when we're talking about Miss Universe. Bulacan got lots of cheers, I have to say that, and she had a really nice little cape removal, or whatever you want to call those things, and she got some extra camera time, which was interesting. Just interesting. I really liked a segment, I will say, that they had, and I think it was, I'm pretty sure because it wasn't all in English, but a segment about kind of like anti-bullying mixed with an advertisement. And I thought it was interesting because it was like the contestants reading mean comments about themselves with their mom. And it just like really hit home because it reminds you, hopefully, that we're human and we don't just see those comments. Our moms see those comments, and our dads and our brothers and our sisters and our grandparents. And they don't like those comments about us either. And I just think it was one of those parts of the show that really humanized the contestants. And I think that it was really nice, and it was very important. For the gown segment, I am going to share my favorite performances. And if you would like to hear my thoughts on everything else, then that will be available in the extended version. First of all, yay, dancers, more dancers. Very happy about that. It was lovely. Also, the parade of gowns, I'm so glad we got to see that, and I'm so curious if all the gowns that we saw were actually meant for finals, or if it was even a third option, because sometimes if a contestant does not make semifinals, her finals gown is not used for the finale, because that gown ends up going to another contestant at another pageant, because the designer does not want that gown to be seen if it's not going to be her finals. But we did see some really, really beautiful dresses for that parade of gowns, and it just goes to show it's really tough. It's so strategic, and it's hard to decide, do I show my best gown for prelims or like save it for finals? I mean, my advice is don't save it, but get two gowns that you feel on you are equally stunning. Behold, she had a gown and styling very reminiscent of Oksana, who won Miss Universe years ago in a Gucci couture gown. And I don't know, but on Pauline, I really, really wish that she would have gone with something that had a little bit more shape, like even just right under the bust. Even if she had that, I would have preferred it on her. And other than that, it was really pretty, though, I have to say that. Like the flow of the gown, very, very beautiful on her. So it was still a great performance. Pampanga, she made me feel something on stage. All right, and I love that. First of all, this is a green gown. Y'all know how I feel about green gowns, okay? Unless it's at Miss Earth. But the gown, though, I will say I still loved it on her. Really, really loved the sleeves. But she was just giving us a moment. She was working this dress. I do wish, though, that the lining of the gown had been nude. It would have been less distracting, I felt like, when she was walking towards the back of the stage. But the performance is what mattered, and that I loved. Makati, I gotta say, she looked very expensive. She looked like a jewelry ad, okay? She just looked rich, okay? This was my favorite performance from her, probably from the entire season. Cha Kazan. This gown was probably pretty spectacular in person. I don't feel like mirrored gowns translate as well through a telecast, but it looked amazing. I'll say that the center slit was a little bit high for me, but the performance was there. I loved it. She was working it. She was taking her time. That's what I wanted to see. She was a huge favorite of mine, and I definitely could have seen her in a top 5 as well. Zambales, oh my gosh, when she walked out in that gown, oh wow, it was a moment, and she was stunning, and the crowd loved it, and I loved it, and she took her time. She honestly took a little bit too much time because they were already announcing Kavite, but we're not gonna think about that because she did so phenomenal. And you know what, I didn't even mind how she tossed the fabric all over the place at the end of the runway. She was confident, she looked incredible. I loved her in that gown. That's a great gown change. Baguio, okay, that pose in the back, I don't even care how far away she was from the camera. That just did something to me, okay? I was watching, I was like, I could feel her through the screen. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, is she gonna win? You know, I was just blown away. Honestly, this performance right here, this is what I think that Philippines needs to get back into the semifinals at Miss Universe. This exact performance it's just a winning Miss Universe performance for me, okay? If not winning, at least semifinals, then at least top 5, all right? This moment, and it's just so funny because I literally talked about this gown in my Miss Universe recap this past year. I said when I was competing for Miss USA that I envisioned a gown, and I showed you all a template of what I envisioned, and it was this gown. This gown. This was the gown that was brought to light. So it was bittersweet. I got to see my dream gown on stage, and you know what? It looked just as incredible as I thought it would look. Oh, it was right. It was amazing. For me, it was the facials though overall. Those were Miss Universe facials. You know, now she's Miss Philippines Charm, and I think she'll win that. So good for her. When I think about evening gown, I feel like this competition was a defining moment that completely determined the top 5, because I had a top 6 going out of this, and I say a top 6 because I have my own personal favorites, and if I were a judge, obviously I would only have one score going into the finals, and it would just kind of be a, you know, let the chips fall where they may once everybody else's scores were added to mine. But I had all of the top 5 in my favorite top 6. Also, Arbany came out and spoke, which I always love when our reigning Miss Universe does, and I love that she's getting on stage and speaking, because she's talked about this before, that she entered pageants so that she could become a more confident speaker, and I just love that she has this opportunity. And also, I will say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad somebody brushed down her hair a little bit. When they announced her as judging, I just thought that the hair was it was so big. It was so big. And then when she came out on stage, it looked like somebody smoothed it, brushed it, and it looked perfect. So I was glad to see that. Our top 5 were Baguio, Pampanga, Bohol, Zambales, and Makati. Each contestant was asked a different question. I'm going to quickly run through the questions and their answers. So Baguio was asked, trans women athletes are now allowed to compete in women's sports events in many international competitions. Do you think this is a step in the right direction? Why or why not? And she said, I'm all for equality. However, I believe there's a biological reason we shouldn't allow trans women in the women's category, because I think there's a right time for that and the right measurements to be done. Overall, this was a very confident answer. Pampanga was asked, there were calls by some sectors to brand films and TV shows that portray the Philippines in a bad light. Should we? Why or why not? I thought this was great. She said, I believe that in every aspect there are 2 things. There are good and bad, but it's the matter of how we receive the images that we are sharing about the Philippines. We always share the good and the beauty that there is in the Philippines, but we must also accept that in every aspect there is bad. And we must learn and grow from that and improve the country that we are in, and hopefully we will see the Philippines for the good and the bad and celebrate it and allow us to appreciate the country we are in. I thought this was an excellent answer because it's true. There's a bug that flew in my eye. There's good, there's bad in every country, and we can all do better. Bohol. There are reports of online sexual exploitation of women and children. As a woman, how do we make the digital space safe for you and other women? Interesting question. So she said, we make the digital space safe by taking the lead in that action, by making sure that what I put out there is the truth and is also a message of hope for everyone else. And for anyone that finds himself or herself in such a situation, know that there are people out there who will be able to help you, reach out to you, and make sure that you will be able to get through this and we can make a difference together. This honestly shocked me as an answer from her just because I was so ready for her to just blow me away with an answer. I do feel that the answer was a little bit safe. And I don't really feel like she offered up as much of a suggestion for how do we make the online space safer for everybody. What measures can we take? Who's responsible for it? Does it fall into legislation? Does it fall into private users using their own discernment? Do we create stricter measures? Is it up to the social media companies themselves? Is it up to search engines like Google and Bing? Like, who can make these changes? Is it all on us? What can we really be doing here? So I thought it was interesting that she didn't offer up one of those things as a suggestion. Zimbalis was asked, a recent Goldman Sachs study found that artificial intelligence tools, or AI, could impact 300 million full-time jobs worldwide, which could be a significant disruption to the job market. What do you think of this? Interesting they didn't ask her for any type of real solution. They're just like, what are your thoughts? She says, we are moving forward with progress and growth, but change is not always about progress. We have to consider that manpower really pulls up economic development in each and every country. We have to put importance in each and every person making their jobs. And then there was something I missed in what she said. In each and every job in our country. So we have to balance AI and also the importance of having manpower in the country. I totally agree with her. I think, honestly, yes, a lot of people's jobs can be replaced by AI. I know y'all didn't ask, but I feel like we're going through another industrial revolution, essentially, and people did adjust, but I hope that we could just take this entire transition slowly so we don't just massacre the workforce. Makati was asked, income inequality is still high in the Philippines. The gap between the rich and the poor remains. How do we close that gap? She said, I think we first have to recognize what we have and the privileges that we have, such as food, education, and homes. I think the best way to address this is really through education, because education holds no status quo and every Filipino child has the right to an education, but not just any education, but quality education. Because I believe if the government can provide this to every Filipino child, then we can not only elevate their quality of life, but we can empower them as well. Great answer here. She really got the crowd going. This was a big win for her. In the next portion, they all got asked the same questions and they had headphones on. The question was, recently the Department of Tourism has adopted a new branding campaign. We give the world our best. To you, what is the best that we can offer to the rest of the world? Why do you consider it so? Baguio. She said, having to struggle at a very early age, I had uncertainties, but I received kindness at many times. So now, aside from that it's free, I give kindness to everyone because this kindness can go a long way. It can motivate someone, give radiance to their days, and because this kindness also made me transform myself from a woman who had nothing to a lady who has the universe at her doorstep. So we always love that little universe wink wink, right? But I will say that I felt like this answer was a little bit on the edge. She said what she would give, but it seemed that the question was inferring what could the Philippines give in relation to their tourism department or what they have to give to the world. So I was a little bit on edge about this, but she still spoke really well and she did a great job. So, I would be taking into consideration overall performance. Pampanga said, I come here not just sharing my story, but the multitude of stories we've yet to hear, as especially for those struggling with mental health. I believe the best we can do is to remember the humanity in us, the empathy that we have inside of us all along, and to unlock it so that we can provide more humanity in humanity. The best way to share this is to allow people to have safe spaces for mental health so we can further this advocacy and more. So this was a pretty smart answer because she talked about essentially providing a safe space. Like that's what we can do to give our best, and I would assume this would connect to her advocacy. Bohol said, the best we have to offer to the world is Filipino warmth. It's something we feel in other countries when we see other Filipino communities. It is something we feel even more evidently here in the Philippines. And with this slogan at heart, with this value within us, we'll be able to bring so many people together to make meaningful change out there and show them the best the Philippines has to offer. So I thought this was a great answer, sharing that Filipino warmth, which is so true. It's something I've definitely experienced with all of my Filipino friends. Zambala said, the best we can give to this world is to be of good cause, to find our purpose, to wake up every single day, to be grateful that you still have a chance to live and see the beauty of life. To find your purpose and make something out of it, to create great change for the people around you, yourself, your family, and your community. And I hope we strive for betterment and development of each and every individual. I thought this was a pretty good answer, but the audience really didn't go crazy for this. I'm not sure if it's just because they had other favorites at this point or what was going on, but I thought this was pretty well said. All right, for all of us to find our cause, so that's what we can be given in the world. I really believe that, because if you find your purpose and you share your gifts with the world, you can really make a positive impact in the lives of others. So Makati, I think, just really won it here, okay? So she had a good first answer. I preferred this second answer. It was great. So she said, the Philippines is home to very beautiful and natural resources, the beaches and mountains, but I firmly believe the best natural resource that the Philippines has to offer is us Filipinos. We are the true heart and soul of the Philippines with the way we are hospitable, with the warm smiles, and we are the reason the world keeps coming back for more. No matter where the universe takes me, I will always be proud to call the Philippines my home, and no matter what happens, I will always be proud to call myself Pinoy. That answer, it's kind of like, if that's not a Miss Universe Philippines answer, I don't know what is. Okay, like, this was such a great answer because I also felt like it really tied to tourism. She really embodied that with this answer. She's talking about, yes, we have beaches, we have mountains, we have all these lovely things and natural resources, but people come back here, the tourism is booming because of us, and that's so true. I feel like that's very true. But then at the end, she's really bringing everyone in, right? Especially the judges, I'm sure. She's like, but I'm just so proud to be Pinoy. And then also she said that no matter where the universe takes me, that I'm always proud to call the Philippines my home. So just like that ultimate pride in who she is and the country she hopes to represent at Miss Universe, it was just a slam dunk with this answer. Here were the results. Pampanga, second runner-up. Zambales, first runner-up. Baguio received the charm title. Bohol is going to represent the Philippines at Miss Supranational, and Makati is the new Miss Universe Philippines. So congratulations to all these ladies. This is a huge accomplishment. So I have a couple questions though for everyone. So I believe that our first and second runner-up, they can recompete, if I'm not wrong. I would assume so. I'm not sure if the winners of Charm and Supra can recompete if age eligible. I would assume maybe not. If that's the case, then that's very similar to how things work at Binibining Pilipinas, and you know, that's just, it is what it is. I will say that I wish that the other ladies would have had their crowning moment on stage as well instead of in a separate arena. I understand though the reasoning to just crown Makati because it's a huge title and it is her moment. So I do get that, but I still, you know, I don't mind crowning the other ladies on stage. Give them their moment too. They also worked very hard. By the way, little thing, y'all notice when Arbany stepped to the side slightly after she put the sash on and she allowed Celeste to crown Michelle, and I just thought that was such a class move. I love that, and I think it's so nice to do for a title holder. I always remember whenever I would crown my successors that I would make sure that their sash was on very nicely and that there, you know, wasn't upside down or anything like that. And then I would kind of always, you know, put my head to the side of hers. So a lot of times I would have my crown on when I was crowning at, depends on your organization, but I never wanted it to look weird. I've seen really strange crowning photos where a title holder stands behind and it's almost like a double crown on a girl's head, or just things look strange. So I always made sure to just kind of stand at the side, place a crown on her head, and it was really nice that Arbany stepped out of frame, so that would allow Celeste and Michelle to just have that moment. I just thought that was such class. It just looks great for photos, you know? But I always did that. I always kind of like held the crown on a second longer to get that nice photo, and then I quickly stepped out of frame to give the new queen her moment because I just thought that was always so special. watch and learn, ladies, watch and learn. Now I do have some thoughts though, because remember, in the past they were giving it like tourism titles, they were just different, but now they have these 3 franchise rights. And I think that going forward that this organization, the new one, is going to have a lot more success if in the future, instead of just giving the high, because this is what I think happened. I think that the high point went to Makati, and that makes sense. If you watch the show, I feel like that makes a lot of sense. But I think that they're going to have a lot of success in the future if they assign the top 3 placements to their respective international competitions, or if you choose from the top 5 your top 3 title holders. And so when I thought about their performances, or when I think about each lady in the organizations that they go to, when I looked at what I saw during finals, I really could have seen a different result. I could have seen Baguio with the universe title because of that evening gown performance. I thought that her onstage questions were fine. They weren't blowing you out of the water, but she has time to prepare more for that onstage question. And yes, you could also say Michelle has time to prepare more for her walk, which I'm sure she will be doing. But I just felt that Baguio has a strong swim, a strong evening gown walk, and I think with subtle changes for her onstage answer that she could really improve, because she also had a great interview. So that's something I would be taking into consideration. Now, for me, Zambala's, I loved her performances, and I really feel like she could go for charm. After watching the Miss Charm pageant this past year and kind of seeing a little bit and learning about them, I just feel like she could make such an impact there at charm and could have potentially just taken home that international title. Although I think that Baguio is going to have a great opportunity to do that. I think she can also do that as well. And then honestly, when I thought about Makati's performance and watching Supra, see at Supra, the top 12 go through an onstage question, and then so do the top 5. And it's a little different because the top 12 all get the same question, and then the top 5 get different questions. And so just thinking about how Makati was answering, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have really seen her at Miss Supranational doing very well. Just in my opinion, from what I have seen going to these pageants. And then my other 2 placements would have been Bohol and Pampanga. Now, I don't know about their future eligibility for the pageant and how that works, but maybe if there's potential to come back and to keep improving. But that's kind of when I watched the finals, judging off of those performances, but also their preliminary performances, and kind of thinking about everything, and then also thinking about these respective pageants, I kind of felt that those ladies would have been very well matched to those different organizations. Not that I don't think that they're going to do great in the organizations that they're going to, but I just kind of felt like with the way that everything played out, I could also see that as a result. So I don't know. What are your thoughts though about the entire pageant and the result? I'm so curious because I just felt like there were so many surprises this year because, like I've said in other episodes, just a lack of consistency, interestingly enough, from a lot of their performances. All of my challenge episodes were so different and so unique, and I was all over the place with my favorites. I could just see so many of these ladies doing well at international competitions. This was a really special group of contestants, so I loved it, but let me know what your thoughts are, and let's remember to continually support the contestants in the comments. I greatly appreciate all of your support though, and I hope to see you at the next episode. But don't forget to check out the other episodes in case you missed them covering Miss Universe Philippines, and let me know which pageant you want me to cover next.